back right now. So. The building codes bring back to security. You've seen it about that, but we can see that goes.
I do. I'm
Like, so, yeah. Take it off.
yeah.
Everybody, we're gonna get started again.
Well, I just looked. Yeah, I am still interested in this to explain this water has been.
All right, folks.
I yeah, totally agree.
I'm trying to regulate us, Karen.
All right, regulate us. Great. Well, next up we have Muriel Miller, and as I said before, unfortunately, Nick, Warren from Severance is unable to join us today, but Muriel is going to share, City of Fort Collins water supply and demand planning. She is a water conservation manager, and she's been working for the last 8 years, developing and implementing programs, policies, and plans to manage water demand through efficiency and conservation. She has a diverse background with over 15 years of work in local government, where she served in complementary roles as a land use planner, sustainability coordinator, and public works director. She has a bachelor's in environmental science and a master's in public administration. Thank you for being with us. Muriel.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. Good morning, almost afternoon. I am gonna talk a little bit about supply, one slide's worth, and mostly about demands, because obviously that's the bulk of my background and knowledge is there. So if you do have supply questions related to Fort Collins utilities and I'm not able to answer them, I'm happy to take back any questions and try and get some answers for you. The other thing is I'll use the words efficiency, conservation, demand management somewhat interchangeably. So I'm using them kind of to mean the same thing. So hopefully that's not too confusing. I do want to orient you just a bit to Fort Collins Utilities Water Service Area. So this is the blue area in the middle here. It's about 60% of the total land area within Fort Collins city limits. It serves about 80% of our population. We have 36,000 accounts. The majority of those are residential accounts, and we treat about 7.5 billion gallons a year. So here's my one supply side. We are fortunate enough to have two different supply sources. So we have the Cashawapooter River where we have our native rights. And then we have Horsetooth Reservoir where we have Colorado Big Thompson quota that Northern Water manages. We need both of these, but the redundancy piece comes into play. It can be really helpful when there's water quality issues, for instance, on maybe the Cashawapooter River because there's a fire. We've been in that situation before where we can switch over to our Horsetooth Reservoir water source. And, you know, there's a potential down the road for there to be impacts to the Colorado River. And if our quota at Horsetooth is less than what we typically depend on, there's an opportunity to use more of the Cashawapooter River. Where we're limited is with climate impacts. So climate impacts a lot of our supply in various ways. And we're also limited in storage along our Cashawapooter River system. So that's why we've been really interested in pursuing Halligan, is to have more storage there to act as almost a savings account for when we do have a water shortage and we have a low quota from CBT, from our Horsetooth water source. We could then utilize some of the water that maybe we had saved up and stored in a storage system that we are currently don't have enough. So a little bit about what water conservation does at Fort Collins Utilities. We develop and create and implement various policies, plans, programs, and services. So there's a team of 8 of us, including myself, that all have very diverse skill sets and backgrounds, very interdisciplinary. So we have a horticulturist, we have irrigation specialists, we have planners, we have project managers, data analysts that take a lot of different skills in order to do the work that we do, because we're supporting customers in reducing their use, not only indoors and outdoors, but across all customer types. So commercial, industrial, residential, both multifamily and single family. So there's a large diversity and complexity of water use challenges that can exist in that space, in those spaces. I do also want to mention that sometimes water conservation can get a little bit of a bad rap, that can be seen as lowering the utilities revenue and impacting bottom line. And while the math of that, may be true in some cases on a year-to-year basis, there are many long-term benefits that exist and long-term financial benefits that exist to water conservation and efficiency. So I feel very fortunate that utilities finance team has realized those benefits. For instance, if our use had stayed at a level that it was in 2000, we would need a much larger Halligan Reservoir. We would likely be closer to needing to expand our water and wastewater treatment plants, and we're not in those positions. We do need Halligan Reservoir, but it's a lesser volume or acre feet of water that we need as a result of us managing our demands really well over the last 25 years. I'll also mention that water conservation per gallon is much cheaper than expanding major capital infrastructure, as well as buying more water rights to support expanding demands or increasing demands. And then there's also other benefits. This is not a comprehensive list either, I'll say, but there's increased resiliency, especially in our landscapes, when we're putting in the right types of landscapes, increased resiliency to potential water shortages and droughts. That water conservation can minimize the frequency and severity of water shortage, which if you go into a water shortage, at least, and for Collins Utilities, you're oftentimes triggering restrictions, which can have so many impacts across so many different sectors, including economic impacts. And then last but not least, I think it's good customer service. It's an opportunity for us to support our customers when they need it in reducing their use and reducing the amount that they have to spend on their utilities. So I've got a couple graphs to share just to give you a bit of a broader picture of a little bit about what we do in our influence, and then also just what demands look like in our service area. Can you guys see okay? Okay. So on the x-axis, we have years. The y-axis, we have total water savings in million gallons. This is the historical trend of what our programs and services have done for at least those things that you can measure. So we have about a little over 16 programs that have measurable water savings. This does not include like land use code or regulatory and other kind of code mandatory type efforts that we've undertaken over the years. This is all kind of voluntary program participation. So rebates and different assessments and that type of thing, and how it's influenced people's water use. So you can see, yes,
what was the spike in 2019? Why was that so much?
Great question. We had previously only been offering residential programs. And so in 2019, we brought online commercial opportunities. And so that was our commercial participation that spiked there.
But we don't see it carrying on.
You're right. Yeah, so 2020, does anyone know what happened in 2020? So we saw a big drop in participation from commercial customers as well as from residential customers. And then we also saw another drop in 2023. Can anyone guess what that was?
What year?
Rain. What year, exactly, yeah. Now, maybe if we had weather normalized some of our savings, which we have not previously done consistently, that might have been a little bit higher. But we had a lot of rain, so our outdoor programs didn't show a lot of savings because people weren't using a lot of water. They were taking advantage of what Mother Nature was providing. But we have rebounded from that. there was actually a lot less water use happening in 2023 as a result of all that precipitation that we got. So that was a big benefit to overall use and reduction in use. Yeah.
I'm sorry if you're gonna answer this, but what is your biggest water savings program?
Our leak alert system. So, and that's, I'd say probably 75% automated. So there is a cost to have the software and the system in place, but we have advanced metering infrastructure. So, we can see output usage for every customer. And when there is usage happening every hour beyond a certain threshold for over 24 hours, a leak alert gets sent to the customer. And that has saved millions of gallons. So
I'm
in
a
this,
recipient of that kind of email,
Yeah.
and I was completely shocked when I got it. I'm like, what the heck, I have a leak, and it freaked me out. So they don't have
Yeah.
a high bust. When I wasn't home and it did extensive damage in the middle of winter. This one I came and I'm like, must be an irrigation,
yeah,
but it wasn't. And quite honestly, what it was is I don't go downstairs as much. Kids are in college. A toilet was running.
yeah, it's amazing how much water that can use.
100%. I was like,
Yeah,
what in the world?
yeah,
But I was so floored. So it's a great,
yeah.
really great
I'm
program.
glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are thousands of these leak alerts that are going out.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
Leak.
A leak alert. Yes, sorry. So when the water meter shows that pattern of use, that continuous usage, there's an alert that gets sent out to the customer. Yeah, yeah,
I was just surprised I got it from my house. It was 72 hours of consistent across the board, but I was so shocked as a consumer.
Yeah.
To get such an email that they were concerned for me about a water pipe bust. And of course, I'm at home running around my house looking for a leak. But to actually see, oh my God, it was just a running toilet. It was, like, kudos to that program that it can work like that. It's amazing here.
So that's not a sign in, opt-in program.
it's opt out. So you can opt out, and there are reasons why, especially businesses and maybe multifamily, units might want to do that, or properties might want to do that because they might see continuous usage and it's not a leak, for instance.
Well, so do we automatically have this?
If you're a Fort Collins Utilities water customer, you do.
I had no idea because I actually had, I saw my utility bill go through the roof and I went out and it was a sprinkler that was broken. And I'm like, I wish I had known,
When did this happen?
just this past summer.
Yeah, well, maybe we can talk and see. Maybe you don't have the right email or phone number set with us.
For
Figure that
a
out.
different water provider.
Well, she just said she was,
Oh, you are?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to talk with you more about that. Yeah.
I'm like, I want to sign up.
Maybe you were inadvertently opted out or something, we can figure that out. Okay. Okay, what else do I want to say about this? So we have, as you can see, in the notes on the right, 180 million gallons is a pretty small fraction of our total treated annual water. But these savings, persist. So they add on each year for the lifetime of the measure. So, toilet might not have a lifetime of more than 10 years, but you're gonna see those savings each year for 10 years. And so these kind of savings often have a compounding effect, over time. Oh, I was gonna test you. Spoiler alert, yeah. So that amount of water, 180 million gallons, is equivalent to a little over 2,000 homes, average annual use in Fort Collins. Those are detached homes, so both indoor and outdoor use at like a single family residential property in Fort Collins. So it can add up to quite a bit, even when you just see that 2.5% amount, can seem low, but it does provide impact. All right, so this chart shows community gallons per capita per day, and it also shows population, which is the orange line. The GPCD is this kind of light blue bar, and what I'm showing you is from 2000 all the way to 2024, and you can see this kind of up and down, up and down, up and down, but a gradual drop. So if we just looked at the difference between 2000 and 2024, we'd see about a 36% reduction in GPCD. And for those that aren't familiar with that metric, we essentially take our total treated volume from a particular year, and we divide it by our service area population, and we divide that by 365 days. It's a way to kind of control for population growth, so you can see like on an individual basis how much use is happening. So it does include the commercial use too. It's not always a great metric to compare to other water providers, because there's so many nuances that go into what you're accounting for in that total water use. So just a cautionary word to, you know, if you see someone else list their GPCD, you have to kind of dig into it to really know what's behind it.
Yeah, Shane Hale was really touting.
And that's because they have so much raw water, so it's just like looking at indoor GPCD for them, right, versus.
It's not what it is, it's the difference in raw water, because you would about 50, you would say, right?
They use non-potable water for outdoor irrigation.
So it didn't enter into his number at all. Is that right?
Well, it, their potable use is 55
Okay,
GCD.
Yeah,
you can't make that distinguish.
well, they're using raw water or non-potable use on most of their landscapes, whereas most of our landscapes is treated water. We do have quite a few landscapes and large landscapes, like a lot of CSU's property is their outdoor use is raw water or non-potable water. So that's not accounted for here, because that's not our water. Okay. Any other questions about the GPCD? Yes.
Are you able to break it apart into like
We can.
residential?
Yeah,
versus
yeah, we can, and I'm sorry I didn't show this here, but, I wanna say our residential numbers are maybe just a little bit less than 50, but I need to pull up that data to remember for sure. So the commercial does play a big role in that, and in some cases, it's not inefficient commercial use, there is some of that, but if you have big industries that are large water users that are contributing to the economy and doing other great things, then you want that water use. It's not, and if it's efficient, you aren't necessarily looking to, you know, do anything about it. It's just, it is what it is for your community. Okay, this graph is a little more complicated. Don't worry so much about the legend if you can't see it at the back of the room. There is a line that's green, and that is the 10-year average, and the data shown in the bars is just for 2024. I think the big takeaway here is that if you're not familiar, this is a very kind of iconic curve for water industries in the West, where you get a large kind of bell shape around irrigation season. And so our outdoor use is about 43% of our total use, which is what that bell-shaped curve is attributing to. And then I think the other interesting thing to call out is our commercial accounts. We only have about 8% of our total accounts are commercial accounts, yet they use about 40% of our total water. So it's an interesting distinction. I'll also mention that residential outdoor use, especially single family, is a greater percentage than 43%, whereas commercial outdoor use is a lesser percentage than 43%. So all in all, residences are using more water outside than commercial customers. Yes.
Is the commercial outdoor for dedicated irrigation meters for commercial buildings, or are you somehow taking the winter quarter average of indoor commercial buildings and then?
We have a mix. We have a mix of those scenarios. Some are dedicated, some are not. And in the cases where they're not, we're doing winter quarter average to determine what is outdoor seasonal use. Yeah. Yes.
I would be interested to see how outdoor water use is changing from like 2000 to now.
Mhm.
And like, because it's so much warmer now
Yeah.
in November, like, are we in today?
But it's so much stronger now in Fort Collins. So like Fort Collins and Loveland, they have so many great incentives to have, I don't like the word xeriscape since everything uses water, but they have all these new code requirements that you can decrease your water use by planting smarter with native plants that are using less water. So I don't know that the gap would be as big as you might think, because we don't really plant all of this green grass you see around this older commercial building anymore. And you have the newer infill products, it's like tall, kind of grasses. It's not the blue grass that's there.
Yeah, there's been a lot of effort towards reducing non-functional turf in landscape codes. There's been a lot of funding going to converting landscapes of existing developments and irrigation rebates, irrigation assessments. That's been our primary focus, outdoor efficiency, for probably the last 5 to 7 years. But there will probably come a point where the impact in increasing demand and what we can manage in existing developments, that difference narrows a bit. I think with new development, we have some pretty progressive codes that are helping with that, but so much of our development in our service area is going to be redevelopment or is already developed. We don't have a lot of new development opportunity compared to other areas in Fort Collins. And we do have a new tool that we've been utilizing that helps evaluate how much outdoor water use we should expect to see with increases in temperature. So we've been working with the Colorado Climate Center to get a very hyper local estimate of what we should expect for temperature and precip changes over the next 50-ish years. Precipitation is a big variable that people, I think, have a lot less certainty around, but temperature is definitely going up, and we've got estimates on what that might look like in 20, 30, 40 years. So we're very aware of that, and that actually went into some of our demand management strategies to help offset what that increase will be in outdoor demands from climate change. That went into our updated water efficiency plan, which I'll talk about here in just a minute too. Okay, I'm nearing my last few slides. So when I think about demand challenges, I think about drivers, which are things that can increase demand. And I think about barriers, which are things that are like challenges to decreasing demands. Growth, although not as big of a factor in our service area as it is in other service areas within Fort Collins, is still a driver. We will see some growth, and that will increase overall water demand. Climate impacts, as I mentioned, definitely hotter, questionable whether it'll be drier, will impact our outdoor demands. And then barriers we're seeing are the economic environment. I think since COVID, and then even more so maybe in the last year or two, especially when we're thinking about businesses, water conservation and efficiency is likely not everyone's top priority. There's some real challenges that the business community are working with and dealing with. And unless there's a really compelling return on investment, they're likely not going to spend their time applying for a program and getting a rebate and doing the work and jumping through these. We don't want to say hoops, but they are kind of hoops. And so there are things we're trying to do to address that. We're evaluating our incentive levels. Those haven't been changed in a number of years, and I think there's opportunity to increase those. We're evaluating the process to make it a little bit more easier. We're looking at different types of commercial customers and whether there's an opportunity to develop different pathways or incentives based on the type of commercial customer. And then for outdoor opportunities, those are inherently challenging for so many reasons, especially large landscapes. There's a knowledge factor. I think there's a lot of really great landscape designers and irrigation companies and landscape companies in Fort Collins, but not all of them are well versed in xeriscape and water-wise landscapes. And so there's a lot of opportunity there for us to support that industry. And we are. And then aesthetics, from the surveys we've done, overwhelmingly, our customers are excited about xeriscape and would like less non-functional turf in the community, but there are a lot of people who don't feel that way. And I'll say trees have so many benefits, and they even can have benefits to demand management also, but they do take water. And if we're wanting to expand our urban tree canopy and maintain the trees we have now, it's gonna take water to do that. And so there's opportunity there to partner with forestry in the city to help reduce water use on landscapes that have a lesser demand and put in, or a lesser priority, put in more native grass, for instance, or some other type of landscape that's not non-functional turf in order to have the water to maintain the trees that have really high value and are a higher priority to the community. Also say behavior. I mean, most of us probably know somebody or have an irrigation system ourselves, and it's only as conservation or efficient as our own behaviors make it. So that's true for contractors too, who are managing landscapes. Yes.
Okay, this might be a little nuanced question, but what is Fort Collins' go-to terminology for like waterway landscaping, xeriscape, like?
We use xeriscape, so not zero, but xeriscape. Yeah, okay, yeah. There's been, at the state level and some other water providers in the Front Range have been using Coloradoscape. But historically, we've always used xeriscape, and so it's a hard term for us to get away from without a lot of like communication around that. And then we've done so much of the low hanging fruit. We've been around for a long time, and we've had programs and services for a long time, and we've always taken a more voluntary approach, and we're seeing the need to start to, look into maybe creating some policies and finding some other methods to layer upon our voluntary and financial and technical incentives that we offer. We feel like a lot of the customers, both commercial and residential, who were interested in taking advantage of what we offer have. And now it's like, how do we address some of those other opportunities that are trickier and harder to get to? The other piece I'll mention is that we have a really high volume of residential units that are rentals in the city of Fort Collins, a little under half. And so I'm thinking like a unit could be an apartment unit in addition to a unit being a single family residence. And that's a really tricky dynamic to develop incentives to address water use there when you have a tenant that may or may not be paying the water bill, but they don't want to invest in a long-term landscape change when it's not their actual home, or you have a landlord that pays the bill and is collecting the cost through the monthly rent, for instance. There's a real limited incentive to make a change there. So I feel we'll be tackling that for a long time. And then last but not least, we're very aware of the impacts that certain development codes and things can have on affordable housing. And so we're looking for ways to be part of that solution instead of adding to the challenge. And that could be in the form of providing some grants for above code water efficiency development. And in a lot of cases, above code doesn't mean cost. So we're actively working on putting a program together for that we hope to launch in February.
In terms of programs, are you guys looking at having any incentives since Fort Collins is so, in your service areas, so primarily like built out for some older neighborhoods or HOA managed kind of open space or bluegrass, are you guys looking at any policies to kind of help incentivize them? Because some of those HOAs might not have all the capital reserves that they would need to kind of swap out some of the non-functional bluegrass to some other options. And so I wasn't sure, is that a program that you guys are looking at since it is kind of an older built out community?
Yeah, those HOA landscapes are traditionally all Kentucky bluegrass and use a lot of water and can be really challenging for a board to go through that process of finding a contractor and doing the work and it's like going through a rebate process and all of that. So what we're doing there is we've done a series of some kind of focus groups with HOAs to better understand what the challenges are and try and better match our services and programs to minimize those challenges or barriers. And the result of that is a focus in 2027 on creating a more kind of wraparound program where we're supporting them from the very beginning to the very end and looking at different financial incentive mechanisms beyond just rebates to help those customers. So the issue with rebates oftentimes is that you have to come up with all the money up front to do the work and you don't get any money back until you complete the project. So there's other things that come into play there, which I think Fort Collins, community planning, has really, and planning and development has really helped. And that's, streamlining some of the minor amendment processes and working with, water conservation to help figure out a way in which, some of the large landscape plans that are coming through that are participating in our Xeriscape incentive program, don't have, we're already reviewing the plans and doing a lot of that work and have a pretty good idea of what some of the code requirements are, where maybe there's a streamlined opportunity for them to have a little bit lesser review. Some of these things are still being talked about, but looking for those opportunities to help minimize those barriers and challenges.
So I always bring up this question and I get the dirty eye because it means less money for the city. But I've been like asking with new housing developments, or is it possible to put one in an established house, is gray water systems, where we can water our lawn using the gray water?
Great question. We wish that it was easier. We really do. So in 2022, Fort Collins utilities adopted the ability for, or the city council adopted the ability for Fort Collins utilities customers to install gray water systems, both in existing developments and new developments. The caveat there is we have some water rate limitations that do not allow us to capture the gray water and use it on the landscape. The only way we can use that gray water is in toilets and urinals. So it's a mix of limitations that the state CDPHE has in the way in which gray water can be used, which is toilets and urinals only or outdoors. And then our specific water rights limit our ability to use gray water outdoors because it's not going back into the system, being treated in our wastewater treatment plant, going back to the river for downstream use to use. That's kind of
That's the native water, right? Or
that's their CBT. That's a limitation. Yeah. So I think there's opportunity there, but it'll require some legal work or things to evolve. And as time goes on, maybe there'll be some changes in that space. So
It just seems like what 70% of our water, whatever, or 90% goes down the drain and, it's from showers or, washing your hands or
for indoor use.
that goes out, your gray water.
Yeah.
But then it's all getting treated at a wastewater plant, but it could technically be used on the lawn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. We just have those legal limitations that prohibit us from being able to do that. So right now it's just limited to keeping the water indoors, the gray water indoors.
So that makes sense that like CBT water needs like the obligation for some of that to go back to CBT that sinks into the landscape in Fort Collins, that doesn't happen. Is there also, I have a half memory of part of the legal barrier also being that like, you weren't allowed to like store water for 24 hours or more because you don't own those water rights. Is that also?
I don't think that's a fact. That is something, but I think that might be different than gray water. So what you're talking about might be more akin to like the limitations on rain barrels.
Right.
So,
Okay.
which there are.
Yeah.
So,
On like new housing and development, what is the city require? Do they, I guess they'll let people do regular grass lawns, or does it all have to be the Xeriscape now, or what's kind of the?
So, we have really, in my opinion, really great, indoor plumbing code, requirements. The state of Colorado is already a water sense state, so all the fixtures that are purchased in Colorado have to be water sense, so there's already a level of efficiency there. We are above and beyond that in the city, and that is citywide because building codes are citywide, not just specific to our service area. So that addresses the indoor, I know that wasn't your question.
Yeah.
And then outdoor, it's a little more nuanced because we don't do, landscape and irrigation reviews. Therefore, we have very little standards for landscape and irrigation at the single family residential level. The things that are reviewed are larger landscapes. So for a multifamily property, for a commercial property, those will be reviewed. Those have, I think, very efficient irrigation standards and very efficient landscape standards. To the tune of the most recent landscape code change for those landscapes that get reviewed, not single family. You are not allowed to install non-functional turf. And your landscape needs to be an average of 11 gallons per square foot of water demand per year or less, which might not mean a lot, but it's, it really steers customers, still gives them flexibility, but steers those development applicants towards a more water efficient development. The other benefit is the less gallons you use in your landscape through meeting that code requirement of 11 gallons per square foot or less. If you go beyond that, you can pay less for your water supply requirement or your tap fee for a new development. So there's built-in incentives there to help reduce the cost. That's in Fort Collins utilities only. I can't speak to Elko.
But it's also the same, so I have a project that's in Fort Collins, Lebanon Water District, it's a multifamily, so it's in Fort Collins, but in the special water district. It works hand in hand because you also want to pay for less water that you're having to dedicate for your irrigation. Anyway, so the code is already steering you that direction, but it also helps with those other special districts because they have their own kind of bracket of however many gallons you're using, then that's the amount that you'll be paying for that tap. Or if you can decrease your irrigation tap size from a 1 inch to a 3/4 of an inch, then that also has a huge benefit too. So it does work in tandem with the special districts kind of around the plans.
What do you guys have on your radar for single family for the House Bill 1113?
Yeah, we're working on that. We have some ideas, but yeah, there's a lot more research and work that we'll need to do there to comply with that.
Do you want to share what that is for those who don't?
Yeah, it's not prohibiting non-functional turf like the previous state bill did for commercial landscapes, which we have complied with. It is limiting non-functional turf, so it gives communities a lot of flexibility there in how you want to limit non-functional turf in single-family residential, but because our reviews of those types of projects are really minimal, I don't think there's really been staff dedicated to that work. We'll have to figure out an option that is compatible with our staffing capacity, I think, is probably the approach we'll take.
And it's new.
It's new.
Not
The effective
existing.
date is the end of 2027 or maybe beginning of 2027, maybe
Yeah.
It's at least a year out.
Yeah, I think, by Jan 2028, Jan 1.
Okay.
So
we've got a little bit of
new
time.
development, right?
New development only, not existing development, yes, correct.
That's statewide.
Yeah.
What does it do though? Does it mean no grass?
No non-functional turf, which is like turf that doesn't have a function. So like median strips.
And it
People
just-
aren't using it for playing or.
For single family, it just limits it. It
Yeah.
doesn't say it's prohibited. So you can have non-functional turf. There just needs to be some kind of policy mechanism or code language that provides a limiting factor. So maybe it's 50% of the landscape, no more than 50% of the landscape can be non-functional turf. I mean, I think in theory, a community could say something like no more than 90%, and they may be meeting the letter of the law. So,
No, we're saying non-functional turf. We're talking about the grass in that picture.
And, well,
I'm
yeah.
not talking like-
In a yard, but just high water use turf must be limited.
And Karen, what you were referencing was SB 2405, and then what Tasha mentioned was House Bill 1113.
Yeah.
So the House Bill 2405 is non-functional turf grass in like medians and stuff like that. It completely eliminates that commercial development. And then the House Bill is directly associated with single family homes.
Yeah, and I was gonna say residential, I think is going to be an interesting challenge for all of us moving forward because we're also adopting the wildland urban interface, which is gonna require additional review of single family, like landscaping materials that we have not had to do before, and that goes into effect for us in April. So, hi, Miriam. Miriam, look at the email, we've not met each other, so I was like, nice to see you. But I think, you know, just some of the additional demands on single family as far as landscaping is concerned and just additional materials and things that we have not had to do before is a resource challenge for most cities because we have way more, like we're more prepared for the commercial developments than we are for some of these single family landscape reviews. So,
You know, we don't, as pine directors, we do not see landscaping plans for individual residential lots. It is something we do not look at.
yeah,
But we're being challenged to make those regulations from the state level.
Yeah.
Into our local development plan review. So the interesting part of that is that where that could go into play is looking at it at the time of building permit process.
Yeah.
Because that's when somebody actually is building on that lot. But even at that, you can build a house and do zero landscaping and just leave it as a dirt lot. I mean, so there's a lot of challenges that people like Lori and I are going to have to work with and figure out what was the intent from the state level, being water conscious, of course, but how do we make that into a regulatory process without making more red tape? And because it's just time and money. So every time there's a new law at the state level,
yes.
it affects us, which ultimately affects builders. So it's just.
Yeah, because I think the thing, it's like these kind of deaths by a thousand cuts where they add all these things on that can be challenging. I did want to add something else on, we are updating our building codes right now. And one of the things that we are shifting is creating a water demand calculator, which also is going to be really helpful for builders to be able to better estimate how the water is used. So I think there's a lot, so we're not wasting like hot water, you know, as it takes, you know, from the source to the tap. And so I feel like there's just a lot of little incremental things I think we're trying to do across the board to look at water conservation.
And that also saves on materials. and labor.
Absolutely, 7%, yeah.
So
But is something like that something that you need to develop in-house or?
No, I mean, this is people I'm over, but not like 100% like the expert on. But what it's doing is there is a resource that you can use that looks at sort of the water demand and it right sizes it for the type of development that you're doing. And my understanding is that we are using an outside resource. People can use an outside resource to do the calculation.
And then come Marcus with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great. Catherine Robert talked to that recently too. So it's out there. It's part of the Uniform Plumbing Code. So it's essentially just pulling in some new codes that exist into your own codes as an amendment. Yeah.
Do you have much more to?
I don't. I think that might be it. I just have one plug for our new water efficiency plan. So if you didn't know, the state requires certain water providers to update a water efficiency plan every 7 years. So we did not only an update, it was like a major overhaul. And so we've got some new goals there. We're no longer tracking a goal, at least having a stated goal of GPCD, which is what we had done since 2015. So we've got some new goals and we developed quite a bit of some targets and metrics, not all of which you see here, that put some of the onus on the city and the city's properties, our parks, our buildings, and other city facilities to reduce their use. We'll track and monitor that and communicate that to the public, which I think will be really helpful. A lot of the feedback we received from the water efficiency plan engagement effort was kind of like, why should I save if I see, you know, parks irrigation running all day long or stuff to that effect. So our parks are extremely efficient and they're doing a lot with the resources they have, but I don't think the community necessarily always knows about it. So it's an opportunity to help kind of lead by example. And that's it.
Brief question. You updated your water efficiency plan. Do you have a separate drought or water shortage plan?
We do, yeah.
When was that updated?
That was updated in 2020 and we're updating it this year again. So it'll be a pretty minor update. We just have some like house cleaning things to bring into the, but yeah.
I have one other question again, that is back on that chart where you showed the savings versus year. How do you actually determine what part of that is indoor or outdoor use? Where's the meter? Is that before, how do you actually?
Make sure I
identify that?
understand which,
It was like your second or third slide.
This one?
Meter.
That one. No, sorry, the next one. Go to your next one. No,
You're talking about
that one.
Yeah,
That one.
yeah, okay,
So you've got the yellow, for outdoor.
Yeah.
it's outdoor, right?
yeah. The stuff, yeah, yellow and the blue on top are the outdoor, commercial, outdoor, residential. So, we have a mix of most of our properties are on 1 meter, indoor and outdoor. Most of our residential properties, single family, are all on 1 meter. Most of our multifamily properties are on 2 different meters. And I'd say maybe half of our commercial properties are on 2 different meters. So when I say 2 different, I'm saying indoor and outdoor. So there's a mix there. For those that we can separate, we do, to develop the indoor versus the outdoor. And for those that are combined, we do what Catherine was mentioning is winter quarter average. So we look at the use in January, February, and March. We assume that's all indoor use. It's an assumption. And then we subtract that from the total use happening in the other months and say whatever is above that is outdoor use and throw it in that bucket and call it outdoor.
Gotcha.
Yep. Okay, thank you so much.
This group from Nick Wharton, he is my boss, amazing, he went through this program. I think the first year, he might have been one of the first year students, highly literate when it comes to all things water, he's awesome, and he had a great presentation ready to go. Our emergency wasn't just personal, it was, some of you may have seen it on the news, we had an officer involved shooting last night, called to a domestic violence call at 9 o'clock last night. It's right at the tail end of our town council meeting. So basically it was up all evening. When those happen, that's call from other jurisdictions coming in. We have